We've got a situation developing with Battlefield 2042. Now, if you've been following the headlines and the general consensus out there, you would think that there is about 7 people playing this game in Steam, that nobody's willing to come back to it, and that it's essentially a dead, abandoned project.
Is that not true?
Yet, if you take a look at Steam charts, what do we see? Well, we actually see numbers that are routinely now going above 10k users on Steam, and we see that quite evidently, something that happened around the 9th or 10th of June caused this to change. And perhaps even more surprisingly, we can actually see that these increased player numbers, while they may be dipping off a little bit, they're generally holding. They're generally holding.
Yeah, I think that... Now, I haven't looked at too many, but obviously we've been looking at charts like this for a long time on this channel. That's actually holding a lot stronger than I would expect of a regular update.
Yeah,
that's
often a regular update just goes boom, and then the news is gone, and it falls back.
Yeah, you get a massive spike of players, then you lose most of that spike, but you keep a lot of people who kind of stuck around.
Yeah.
But it's not quite like that this time, and that's over the course of, 10 days? That's not bad at all.
So it's quite interesting because this all ties to the latest update to the game. And I think around the same time or just before it came out, Jeff Grubb on his Grub Snacks podcast said that the game is working with a skeleton crew who are basically just meeting the required DLC obligations for Premium Edition owners. The thing, though, is that EA have responded to that comment to Eurogamer. And they've said there is still a significant team across their studios focused on delivering the future of Battlefield 2042. And then later Grubb says, basically, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. That's hardly much of a surprise. Now, what's then interesting is that DICE has got a new general manager. That general manager has been sent out basically on a big old media tour.
Yeah, that's... If you were going to abandon a game and let it kind of, I guess, drift out into the oceans of, oh yeah, that game, that was a mistake, let's not think about it again. The last thing you would do is get the new GM of the studio to go and do a media tour, because that's bringing a lot of attention. So that definitely casts a lot of kind of doubt over the fact that they're abandoning this, or even somewhere in the middle whatsoever. It seems like they actually are, well, I mean, Battlefront 2. They know they can do it. So I assume they're just going to run the same, because this is the kind of the same kind of media tour that happened around that anyway. So that's good news, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Rebecca, then the new GM, has went around a few different outlets just talking about the general franchise and 2042. I'll give you the highlights just to keep it nice and brisk. Basically said they want to improve the core gameplay experience. That's what they've been focusing on. They've got good feedback from Season 1. It's the sort of thing, if you look at the Steam reviews, I don't think you really see that. If you look at what people are actually playing in Steam, I think you do see some of that. And I've seen some anecdotal evidence that it's basically what you would expect. Yes, things are better. Are they still where we want them to be? No. That's just how it is. So she says the team is here to make Battlefield. They're passionate about it. They have many veterans. Still, put a pin in that and say they seemingly had massive turnover. But she said it's important for us to improve 2042 and the experience that we can provide to our players. We owe them that. Again, that is sounding like a sort of admission that things didn't go particularly well. And then on the topic of the temptation to just cut and run, no, we couldn't do that to our players, and we couldn't do that to ourselves. I don't want to use the word revenge because it's too strong in English, but, we can't leave it like that. As I said, we owe it to our players. So again, kind of interesting.
That's really refreshing coming from an industry that I think a lot of people think that the AAA industry doesn't give a shit about them, and I think a lot of them are kind of right. But this approach being literally said in a media tour going, no, we will do right by you. Obviously,
it's very fucking easy to say that.
Yeah, of course it is.
It's very easy to say that, and as much as this may all seem good and we could look at a happy Steam chart, there's just that bit of me that thinks, well, they're probably not going to go above and beyond for this one. They're probably just going to fulfill those obligations as best they can and move on. I'm still I'm still suspicious, just because it was delivered like this in the first place,
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be a bit different if this was the first time they'd done this at Battlefield, and not like maybe the third time in a row they've had a Battlefield or a Battlefield-like game that's come out. They're like, we don't really know what we're doing. So I can kind of follow you on that one. But
Yeah, so basically kind of saying that, well, she said that basically DICE had 4 leaders that have left. Now, that's 4 leaders gone. They also, it's not Grubb, Tom Henderson, they had pretty high turnover, like staggeringly high turnover, which is perhaps one of the reasons, in addition to having to move to a new version of Frostbite, that this game, and also that it was kind of originally meant to be a sort of Battle Royale Tarkov-like thing, why this game was a bit of a mess. But she basically talked about reforming a new leadership team kind of around her as general manager, saying that they have to get that organized and they've got to adapt the Battlefield organization, saying it had been organized to ship a game, and you now know live is not the same as shipping a game. I can definitely say, as a Battlefield player, yes, they have shipped games recently. They haven't all been perfect at launch, that's for sure. But almost worse than that, they've totally shat the bed in the live bit. Yeah. Again, you just have to think of whenever DICE were focused on shipping product, as in shipping DLC for Battlefield 1, and you have a humongous number of maps. And then as soon as the transition to live happens, it's like, where did the content go? It all just evaporates.
Yeah,
shocking.
Like, yeah, you would assume that it's just the same because, you know, you're just making game. You're just making more game. But I think that's the one thing we've kind of very much learned is as soon as they transition to the model of, hey, we have to deliver this as a full product every couple of weeks, all of the processes that they have for shipping full disc products, full DLC products, all of that has to adapt to be more agile. Because if it doesn't, you just kind of have, oh yeah, how are we going to get all the testing done using our rigorous processes for this, and it's out in 2 weeks? Oh shit.
Yeah, then it's just a big old disaster. Now, she says that basically they are reorganizing, restructuring, improving the processes, and just doing all of that stuff to make what she says is monster games that are in co-development. Right, with other studios, because of course there's also the ripple effect, right?
Yes, the ripple effect.
So bunch of studios that are assisting, essentially. She also just kind of talked a little bit about, you know, Vince gives us access to the team at Apex. They can kind of share practices, things like that. I think one of the things we're beginning to learn is that DICE was just playing the old game, and that they were not up to date with essentially what EA was expecting from them. And I think that leads to a situation where, you know, they're trying to march to the beat of EA's drum, but they literally cannot do it. And then seemingly EA is just quite unflinching in the ship dates that are required. I suppose because there's just an unwritten law that major shooters have to come out near Christmas.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see for like the first person to break that, the first company to go, maybe we won't. I'd expected that to maybe happen with like an Activision at some point, but they have so many studios, they always have something ready for November. They never have to do with what they did with like a couple of games, which is just, oh, we can't make Christmas. February will do. I'm waiting to see one of them do that, but I imagine they won't. That for that market, that box sale of Christmas is too strong. Way too strong.
Yeah. So to sort of end, she essentially just said that their new structure needs to be lean and agile. She admits that those are kind of like buzzword sounding things, but essentially they need a very clear chain of command when they're making games. It's got to be more flat and more lean so that, well, she says so our creators can feel empowered. I would imagine so that there's just less layers of bullshit to actually getting things done. She said that people need to be able to innovate, be creative, take risks, but to fail fast. And, you know, when you fail fast, that's when you're iterating, that's when you're learning, that's when a game's really getting better. And that's the kind of methodology that you hear a lot more talked up with a studio like Respawn. And on the topic of even the more unusual games like a Mirror's Edge, she basically said, there's no time for anything else. In 3 years, we want to be the first-person shooter powerhouse DICE deserves to be, and that's what we're going for. So that obviously makes sense. That is what they should do. It's nice to have Mirror's Edge. I really loved Mirror's Edge, but they need to get the shooters right. So this is refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need to see shipped evidence, but the thing is that much like with Halo Infinite, you do all your reorgs and stuff, and it's like, yeah, great. Players don't see that.
Yeah.
They're the people who paid for the game.
Yeah, we've spent all this time reorganizing. We've got like Apex advisors on board. We have revamped all our processes. We know how to do a live game now. The players are like, where is it? When do we get to see this live game that you can now make? And Cedar's like, I guess we'll start with a new one. But obviously in this case, they do seem to be focusing on 2042 and getting it on the actual ground again. But it is interesting that it's taken them so long to kind of learn from Apex. But I think it must just be like dice, kind of a little bit of blustering. Oh no, we'll get it this time. We'll get it this time. And there's only so many failures in a row you can go through before like EA go, no, you've proven that you cannot do this. You need to get the experts in. And experts at Respawn. I don't think I've heard of a major misstep that Apex has made that it hasn't covered up in the next 3 months by going, oh, here's the next one.
Yeah, pretty much. I think when you look at 2042, the game originally is this like Tarkov Battle Royale-like thing with 128 players. We know that from their playtesting it was either the late noughties, early 10s, that they knew 128 was not as good for the core Battlefield experience. It seems like that was kind of rammed through, and they decided that they needed to also have, your Conquest, your Rush, all those things. So then we're left with this game where they have to make 128 player maps, which of course is probably way harder to do well, takes way more time. They're literally bigger maps. They cause all the gameplay issues the players felt at launch, and they're doing all this while they're moving engine versions with humongous... So the team is having humongous turnover. They're having massive technical challenges and setbacks. The actual game is changing significantly through development. Like, it's an insane recipe for failure. Now, the odd thing is, throughout all of this, they've been talking up Battlefield just getting more and more and more care, love, and attention. And a part of that is actually now that Battlefield Seattle are staffing up. So they're a studio that is focused on narrative work within the Battlefield universe. They're working their own projects as well as supporting everyone else under Vince Zampella, who I think our basic understanding is that Vince is partially heading up the efforts to kind of save the situation in a very broad sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so the chances of us seeing things from this studio, I think, pretty slim for the next while. Seems like further away stuff. Now, there's also Battlefield Mobile that is in development. Beta testing is continuing. Some closed betas appeared in September 2021. They're doing that, I think, for our kind of audience. We don't really care. I suppose it is to Battlefield as COD Mobile is to COD. Some people will play it. Others won't really care that much. But even if we don't care, this is a game that, according to Andrew Wilson, they're actually targeting for a global launch towards the end of this year. Which sure is something. Hey, here's even some gameplay footage of it. And you can certainly see the mobile, like, accoutrements, etc. But it does just kind of look like Battlefield 3, doesn't it? It's the crazy thing, like, whenever you watch some Call of Duty mobile and there's just people quick scoping in Crossfire and you're like, oh shit, I'm back. Weird, right? So, hey, maybe it could work. I imagine it won't turn into a pay-to-win fiasco like Immortal. Now, other than that, the next full Battlefield game is currently in pre-production, according to Tom Henderson. Tom Henderson, I'd say, is one of the prime leakers for the Battlefield franchise. A lot of what we know about the troubled development of this game does come from Tom Henderson's sources. One inside source said to him that there's been valuable lessons learned following 2042, saying, I think we'll be reverting a lot of the changes we made. Now, that does overall sound to be a good thing. Like, how do we move from Battlefield 5 to the new one? And somehow our movement mechanics have regressed. Like, how does that even make sense?
Yeah, that's one of the things I think is kind of like philosophically going to be a bit difficult for them when it comes to the kind of, hey, we're going to do right by you with 2042. And I guess that's a case of they'll make 2042 the best that 2042 can be, but I don't think anyone can realistically expect it to be a completely different feeling game. Just the peak of what it could be in terms of the same kind of core mechanics, the same stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then with the next one, they'll go, okay, we can start from scratch and we can build everything around a different Battlefield game that's a little bit more in line of what people expect. I think, at least I hope that's the case, because it would be very hateful if they kind of get their own wires crossed. And I can hope that all of this agility means that what they do to 2042 to change it and to improve it, they can take that feedback and roll it into the next game. Because I think the big worry would be if they kind of go for like the parallel development thing.
Oh, Destiny 1 to Destiny 2,
yeah,
where none of the lessons are learned.
Yeah, but like no crosstalk whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's just, oh yeah, look at all these lessons we've learned in 2042, and it's too late because you've already got all of your design documents drawn up and you're too rigid to change it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I'm assuming that won't happen, but if it happens, I'll just sigh.
Well, let's take a look at the 2042 life cycle then, because there's actually a lot of new things that we know. So, they're committed to at least 4 seasons of the game, the first of which is lasting for 12 weeks and released on the 9th of June. Of course, this is the sort of thing that was bundled, the premium edition of the game, so people are expecting at least that many seasons. Now, what's big here is that after Season 2, there will be no more 128-player maps and no further development for Hazard Zone. Again, just saying, like with Firestorm, God damn it, give us the core Battlefield experience. What is the deal with all of these random experiments that seem to take up so much time and energy, and in the case of Hazard Zone, potentially dictate the overall scale of a game in a way that makes it kind of not as fit for purpose for the core Battlefield experience, which is just madness. So it's quite interesting. Here's a quote. All of us in the team had great ambition and high hopes for this new Battlefield experience, but we're the first to hold our hands up and acknowledge that it hasn't found the right home in 2042, and that we'll benefit greatly from letting our focus and energy stay in the modes that you're engaging with. Yeah, people ain't playing Hazard Zone. Hey, if you wanted Hazard Zone to do well, release it as a separate free-to-play product. The same thing is what you should have done for Fire Zone. Like, what are these boneheaded decisions? Yes.
I imagine it's something like correct or efficient use of designer time or something like that, where it's that case of, why make this better when you can spend that time making something new and something that's more of a box feature, something that's more of an advertisement.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, it doesn't matter that we release our game and it's like, maybe it's missing 20% of polish, and that 20% of polish made a whole new game mode. And that sounds really kind of cool on paper if you're thinking, oh, well, 80-20 principle our game. But whenever your game comes out and no one wants to play any of the modes,
and also
then you've done it wrong.
It definitely didn't happen like that. That's what Firestorm was. It was just a bolt-on, and people just kind of thought, why did you do this? Why did you not release this as a separate product? Like, what? But with this, Hazard Zone dictated, like, the scale of the game, the size of maps, likely a bunch of technical things, almost certainly the inclusion of the specialist system, which has broadly not been enjoyed. So that's the crazy thing. It's like this was initially meant to be a very Hazard Zone driven experience, and then per Henderson they kind of have to get the rest of the Battlefield in after that.
Oh, so it was literally Battlefield was a bolt-on to Hazard Zone and they developed it. Cool.
Supposedly so.
Yeah.
Again, supposedly, allegedly, etc. Now, unfortunately, the launch of this new season, as much as we've seen some very nice Steam numbers, it was plagued with some errors. So, load persistence data errors seemingly happen, and they are related to overall player profiles, which, because the game is always online, actually meant that people just couldn't log in. So that's not great.
Error
then
37 again.
Yep. Then the direct comms team were quite open about the server errors, but those persisted until quite late in the launch day, and some of the knockback effects lasted another day or two. So they had a bit of a rough launch. Perhaps, we definitely see it takes like a little bit for it to ramp up. Like initially, it does just kind of have that upward trajectory.
Yeah, it's like a full day, basically.
Though that could just coincide with the weekend because 11th and 12th is Saturday and Sunday.
Of course.
But overall, the launch has done pretty decent.
Yeah, it's a thing where it's not explosive, but it doesn't need to be. It needs to be just okay for just enough players.
So nearly 12k, nearly a peak of 15k. These are obviously not great numbers for the Battlefield franchise, but do note, number one, these are only in Steam. A bunch of people will, surprisingly enough, own this in Origin, and there's also console people to think about as well. So this is perhaps just an indicator that we have went from averages of 2,000 to averages of more like maybe 8 to 10,000. So
crazy big improvement.
Maybe a 400% boost.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to put any number in the headline of I don't know, it's like a 400% boost, but then people think, oh yeah, great, there's 4 players instead of 1. Nice. So as of the 15th of June, they said there was enough data to generate 10 million player positions as a heat map on the new map of Exposure, which as an example could mean that 10,000 players have played it 1,000 times or something else, who knows. But suffice to say, that's a pretty cool way to show off how people are engaging in your new map. Like, that's a really cool heat map. For the new map. But of course, it is just one map. And I think based on what Battlefield 1 got, we would really be wanting more. So as for the features of Season 1 then, there's Exposure, which is a new map. Seems to be pretty cool. There's a new specialist who has a TV-guided missile launcher, 2 new weapons, a VSS-inspired marksman rifle, and then a crossbow with explosive bolts if you want them. There's a new smoke grenade launcher, which returns from Battlefield 5. There's the stealth helicopter that has an anti-infantry focus. Now, all of that stuff is on the free track of the Battle Pass, along with charms, icons, takedowns, and some other things. And And then, of course, the, sort of super fancy cosmetics are obviously on the premium tier.
Yeah, well...
Which I would never consider buying because I just don't care about that kind of thing in Battlefield. I would happily pay for more maps, but I understand the concerns of splitting the player base.
I think that's kind of one of the awkward things, right? Where they have to get the monetization to work. But obviously I think the monetization largely failed here because cosmetics and Battlefield don't really go too well together. So they're trying to kind of force this live service monetization model in, but they haven't even gotten the game right. So they don't have any good data on how the monetization model actually works, because no one's played the game because the game's bad. So it'll probably take them another 3 Battlefield games to get a monetization model that actually works. Unless they're like lucky with the next one or something.
Yeah, it's weird. Now for the Battle Pass, apparently it actually does feel pretty decent to progress through, so that's at least a nice thing. Because I know there's some Battle Passes that feel so grindy that people just get, it's just not a good experience. Now then, another nice thing, which I think to many people will feel like more maps to play, is that they've brought 4 maps from Battlefield 3 and Bad Company 2 into the All Out Warfare menu, meaning that those are available for 64-player quick play. And they also limited the breakthrough mode down to 64 players. Nice. That's good. They even said themselves, we have unshackled ourselves from the 128-player game modes when it comes to how we develop new modes in our game, but also the spaces we use in our maps. Tells you everything.
Yeah, whoever wrote that was definitely they typed that with such intent. They're probably seething, like, unshackle themselves, finally we're out of here.
Yep. They're also thinking of adding a Rush into All Out Warfare as a 32-player mode. Again, I think that'll feel pretty damn sweet. I mean, that's like way more similar to Bad Company 2, a super popular and awesome video game. Also, the classic weapon sets from the Portal maps, those may be also added to the All Out Warfare modes, pending them working out progression and unlock systems, and then just, balance for those guns so they make sense. Now, it does mean that compared to other Battlefield expansions or DLCs, there's not a lot of new gameplay content. I would perhaps say, though, that if you abandoned this game in month 1, you could perhaps come back now, have a bunch of quality of life fixes, and a new map, and then, of course, also those 4 maps you can go and play. I believe Caspian is in it, and I mean, come on, it's Caspian. That's a pretty damn popular map. So if you bought the game and you felt you did not extract value from your purchase when it came out, you may be able to get some now. As for the outlook, well, there's a significant amount of work to be done on reworks to already released content, which means map specialists' voices. They're actually changing the voices. I think they just want them to be more immersive to a pseudo-authentic Battlefield experience, and also some animations. This obviously does take a whole bunch of time. So here's like some of the stuff that they're showing for like changes to running animations, stuff like that. Yeah. So again, this is just stuff that like shouldn't have been borked at launch. Evidently it was. They clearly didn't have the time, but it's the sort of thing they're working on now.
Crazy that this is just actually starting to look like a full-on rework of so many parts of it. That must be very embarrassing for them to do internally, but if they have to do it, they have to do it. Yeah,
and they've said that, all the planned but unreleased content now has to be hitting their new standards and guidelines, so they'll be working that. Specialists are being completely reworked on a cosmetic and mechanical level, so that's going to take some time. They should have got it right the first time, yes. They didn't, so what do they do now? I suppose fixing it is better than cutting and running. At least they can learn some things, and the players who did put their money into this game will get a bit more out. So if we were to kind of leave this at something, here's what they've posted for Season 1. So there's their May update with Breakthrough 64. Season 1, which has got animation improvements, traversal improvements, and a map update to Kaleidoscope. And then, as we kind of go into Season 2, there's the renewal map being updated, and also specialist look and feel updates. It's good to see a plan. Overall, I think this kind of just gives us a perspective on how screwed the game was at launch. That these are the sorts of changes that they have to make, that the quantity of maps isn't there because they have to rework the maps that are already there. I think overall, though, it does just show the strange state of the Battlefield franchise. In Battlefield 1, our movement mechanics felt great. We had loads of new maps. Battlefield 5 comes in, it improves the shooting, it makes some design changes that I really enjoyed. I think some of the more casual players maybe didn't enjoy as much, but even like the traversal, like the player traversal in Battlefield 5 feels awesome. even the things like a massive bomb goes off near you and you get blasted off your feet. That wouldn't fit great in a Call of Duty arcade sort of arena shootery thing. But in a Battlefield game, it totally works for the chaos. It works for the immersion, works for the kind of feeling of authenticity. And then you hit 2042. The traversal that felt so good in 5 is gone. I think a lot of people are reporting the gunplay didn't feel as tight to them as well. Maps are a mess. The content's not there. They still haven't worked out what their tone is, even after all of the feedback, post-launch of Battlefield 5. I think it just points to a very strange situation. One that seemingly they're trying to get a handle on now, but the next core Battlefield game had better be one of the best ever, with the least issues, strong launch, strong follow-through, and it has to come off the back of 2042 getting a full quantity of fixes, of updates. And I suppose if you think about the people who were sold, on the premium edition with 4 different seasons, surely 1 map per season ain't what they're expecting.
It's not what they're expecting, but I think that goes to show the problem of buying stuff ahead of time, where all they have to do is meet their legal obligations, and if players feel bad, then that's kind of too bad, at least as far as EA are concerned, because they'll go, okay, well, Battlefield is bigger than hurting a couple players in the short term, especially when you think of how the like AAA games industry has always treated these things, where it's like, oh yeah, we really badly scuffed that. Whoops, we'll do better next time. And there's definitely, with the live service model, there's a lot more room for, oh, we can fix this now, sort of. But it's all it's still a means to an end of, they can't just abandon Battlefield or their money's gone. They need to kind of get their customers kind of sort of back on track by getting the live service elements of it right. Maybe that'll bring in a couple more sales, or bring in, a couple bits of more monetization, more battle pass stuff, just to keep them going until they can go, okay, we'll get it right next time. And I think that's the point. I think so many major AAA companies, especially in the shooter space, are kind of at that, where it's like, we have to get it right next time. It's because we keep doing this. We'll just fuck this up. We'll get it right next time.
Well, what kind of worries me is maybe they're thinking that, like, if they want a big live service game, maybe that's why they tried to make this a Hazard Zone game with specialists and all that, because they could do the cosmetics and stuff more. Maybe, like if you take a Call of Duty Warzone and then a Battlefield, like, what one's going to have better live service revenue from optional spend? Is it going to be Battlefield, where you're just kind of playing rounds of Conquest or whatever the new name for the Rush-like game, Breakthrough, I think? Or are you going to get it from Warzone, where you're far more often playing in a squad with your friends and just all of the things that work in Warzone? Does it maybe point to some sort of issue where the Battle Royale-like games just convert more? So we have games like Battlefield 2042, perhaps even like the new Halo, that perhaps struggle to monetize, maybe struggle to convert. Is that why we seemingly see less budget be put into maps for Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042? Like, I just wonder, because certainly I know that, like, I'd be way more likely to buy a skin for a champ that I really enjoy in League. In fact, when we were playing for a few months, like a few years ago now, I did, and I felt okay doing that because it was fundamentally a free game and I was having loads of fun in it. But I've never felt the urge in any of these Battlefields to buy a skin.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of fundamental problem that I guess a lot of that old school kind of shooter thing will have to face, is they're trying like tried and tested, proven monetization methods in their game, but those monetization methods haven't been proven in those genres, in those games. Those methods have been proven in different genres. Say they're shooters, right? But there's something that fundamental difference about what it's like playing a BR, where you have so much more time kind of in the quiet sense, so you have a lot more engagement that way. You've got a lot more player stories, you have a lot more emotional attachment. All of those kind of things are victories which lead to the monetization working a little bit better in terms of optional spend, and also in terms of, like, when you have a game that's a little bit silly or not super authentic, then you can have monetization in terms of kind of goofy kill animations or stuff like that, or even kind of weird appearances and shiny guns and stuff.
Which itself, a lot of people saw the Santa cosmetic for 2042 and thought, like, what's this? Why is this in Battlefield? What are you doing?
Yeah, so it's like looking at Halo Infinite and looking at the Battlefield series, they need to find a way to monetize. They can't just go, oh, we'll lift this monetization thing. Go, it fits.
Yeah.
Because it's fundamentally a different jigsaw.
It will work far better for Halo than it will for Battlefield.
Yeah,
Because, like, for Battlefield, it's like, yeah, you're going to pay for some form of vaguely tactical dude. Whereas in Halo, recon armor.
Yeah, that's at least cool.
Right? Like, the Halo stuff, you just walk around as a big samurai dude.
Yeah, so
It's going to be a lot harder to do that in Battlefield. And I guess that's why they tried to, in Battlefield 5, have this strange thing where your character is bleeding out, crying for their mother, while you hear them choke on their own blood in their throat while you are downed, while simultaneously they're seemingly trying to make it feel like some sort of big, bombastic, crazy fun time in the advertising they were doing. They had this complete tonal mismatch. Evidently because the people who are creatively interested in Battlefield, who are maybe composing like the beautiful music that's in Battlefield 1, they're trying to take this sort of thing seriously and go for a degree of authenticity. Remember, sometimes the game journals struggle with this one. Authenticity and realism are different. People don't understand that Battlefield madness is compatible with authenticity. It is not compatible with realism. Battlefield players don't want it to be a part of realism because if they did, they'd be playing Squad or Arma.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe that whole thing is just the thing of journalists who do not play this franchise, like coming in, or maybe just trying to, position themselves as kind of like anti the people who are displeased at something, which just seems to be the way to do things these days.
Well, it certainly is.
So it's weird. This has been such a confused, directionless franchise, torn between trying to make the best of its setting and then evidently what is being done for financial reasons at the expense of the core game.
Yeah, and that's the
bullshit can't continue.
Yeah, that's the thing. How much is that bleeding together? Like, how many of these game design decisions are fundamentally like, oh yeah, well this would be a little bit more monetizable if we did this. Oh yeah, we could shift the tone this way. And maybe it's not super intentional for everyone involved. Maybe it's just the overall opinion in the company shifts a little bit, so everything kind of moves that way. But it is very much like they have a bigger problem to solve than not being able to make content fast enough. But they haven't run into that problem yet.
Yeah.
But you only hope they do.
So it's a big old mess, but leadership has changed. Mm-hmm. That perhaps is a good thing because the old leadership was not producing good results. That's one good thing. There are more studios working in this franchise, so there are more resources. That is another good thing. Generally, things with Vince Zampella and the management team have gone quite well. That's another good thing. They've increased their average daily players by 400% via content update. That is a very good thing.
Crazy, yeah.
So there are large-scale worries about the franchise. There are small-scale worries, but we are at the very least seeing some positive movement, and that's definitely nice for the players of Battlefield. And it's enough that I will probably hop in. I'll probably hop in to see what's up, see if it's any different.
Yeah, because it's, I guess, the right or correct or good isn't a destination, it's a journey. Yes. And at least they're philosophically on the right way now. That, at least as far as what they're saying, and some of their actions so far have definitely proven that. So to me, it's about, is this going to be a marathon of improvement? And all signs point to yes. So it's just about when that pre-production for the next title flicks over into production, will they be able to keep some of this progress going?
Yeah. It's like, at what point do the leaders at EA realize that they need Battlefield to be Battlefield and they need to get this right?
Well, that's the thing.
Perhaps they've realized now.
They've got Battlefield Seattle, they've got Battlefield Mobile. There's a lot of money resting on that IP. And if they continue to shoot the IP in the head with, what they're doing with the core games, then that's not going to last. So, and that's the thing. Everything we say today, they know.
Yeah.
These people are professionals at this. They may be making, but, they've got difficult jobs to do. But at least now they actually are kind of philosophically looking, going, yeah, well, you guys are important at the end of the day. So we'll have to make this a little bit for you. Or mostly for you, I would hope. But yeah. Yeah. So, did EA save Battlefield 2042?
Not yet. But maybe? Vince Zampella good? Hopefully? Maybe it's not all doom? That's my opinion. There you have it. Okay. Yep. Let me know if you are one of the 400% more average players of this game, what your experience has been. And who knows? Maybe I'll hop into a server and I'll end up meeting you there. Till then, Have a great day. We will, of course, have more content on the channel tomorrow, so stay tuned for that, and goodbye.